Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton at Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe, but there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful September the 24th, 2020. Rondo Deportes, bonjour, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, it's wet down here. I think it's all the tears from the release of the grand jury verdict yesterday in Kentucky. But the governor of Kentucky today asked for the release of the grand jury transcript by the Lieutenant Governor, Daniel Cameron.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to ask. All he has to do is sign an executive order, and it's done. You don't have to plead with anybody that's beneath you.
Yeah.
But once again, I want to send out a thank you to our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, our doctors, our first responders. They just do the job, and they do it correctly.
Yeah, they do it correctly, and we will do it correctly, too. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. When you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Also, all around the world, just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV, or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Man, I love pausing, Big C. It's always good for your health when you pause, and I'll never pause on the Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced, Big C, helping veterans and their loved ones get help. Why is that so important to you?
Well, Charlton, it's important to me because it's not important to the administration. When we think about our president who called our military veterans losers and suckers,
I know.
And with all the mental problems and physical problems that they go through after leaving their tour of duty in the service, Charlton, many of them have resorted to suicide, a couple dozen a day in America. And the president never addresses that issue. We address that issue about the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, each of our shows, Charlton.
Yeah.
But we need it to become an American administration issue. Our government needs to take better care of our veterans instead of boasting about what they have not done, lying that they've done it.
Yeah.
Our veterans need the help of America every day, financially, emotionally, physically. Many of our veterans are homeless during this COVID-19 devastation that we're having running across our country. They don't have proper aid to get to health care, Charlton.
Yeah.
And so when our veterans suffer, they suffer every day, and America's turned their back on them. We will never do that.
We will never do that, Big C. And we're two black men. Isn't that amazing? Only in America, you can call 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and you can get to some help. I want to just make sure that I say we're two African-American men, and here we are asking for people to get help for our military veterans, and oftentimes we're told we're unpatriotic, even though we fought in every war. I love giving up that hotline, Big C. Also very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, Direct TV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants, and they say, hey, kid, when you reach out to them, just tell them Big C sent you. Our goal is simple: recruit 10,000 real estate agents and brokers all over this country to put their property listings on TV, just like McDonald's does it. Car dealerships do it, and yes, sports teams are doing it too. But you got to make the call, 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624 for looking for opportunities. Go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com, and you can get some help. I really want to make sure that I get this point across. I just thought about it, what you said, that maybe our administration doesn't do enough, but they're out of work in about 39 days anyway. But I am hearing more and more sports teams that are also trying to get the message out I want to make sure, please register to vote. Some people don't, they think they're registered, but they're not. Just text the word vote to 26797 and get registered. Tell all your friends that Big C and the NFL said vote now. Big C, they should not wait till the last day. Big C, your thoughts? The NFL said it. Also, sports leagues, Major League Baseball, NBA, they're all saying get out and vote. Big C, why should they not wait until the last day to vote like a lot of people think they can? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you can get an absentee ballot anytime you want. You can save yourself from standing in line. You can do that your entire lifetime. Get your mail-in ballot. There's early voting that has started across the United States. You don't have to wait until November 3rd till the lines are around the block.
Yeah, you guys got to do that. Just get out there and make sure your family members know that they can do it too. Even people who just turned 18, yep, they can vote now. And I'm saying vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Vote for decency. Don't vote for a guy that caused over 200,000 Americans to lose their life because he lied. Imagine going to your doctor and your doctor lies. You would never go to that doctor again, especially 200,000 people dying. Big C, I want to open up and I want to pay homage to the great late Gale Sayers. Former Hall of Fame. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer. Former great Chicago Bear football player. I remember he had a movie called, I think it was Brian's Song, with he and Brian Piccolo. Both men have passed on. But when I think about Gale Sayers, it was before my time. So what I know about Gale Sayers, Big C, is what I've seen by watching television, etc. Give me your thoughts on the great Gale Sayers. I don't think a lot of young people realize how good he was, Big C. Your thoughts?
Charlton, they don't realize how good he was, and they won't never realize how good he was. You think about the modern-day running backs. When people want to look at a Barry Sanders and an O.J. Simpson and the great backs that were so elusive in the NFL, you got to realize Gale Sayers was the master to that, Charlton.
Yeah.
He created that. He was the original. The silky smooth running back that had all the moves you could think about. You think about when he burst onto the scene, setting an NFL record, as a rookie with 6 touchdowns in one game against the San Francisco 49ers. Ironically, his career was basically ended against that same team, the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah.
But what he brought to the backfield of the NFL was grace and elusiveness that nobody had ever seen before, and it became the mantra of the black running back in the NFL.
Yeah, and especially doing his thing. He was doing his thing in the Jim Crow era, Big C. He was named the NFL's 100th anniversary all-time team in 2019. Two times he's the NFL rushing yards leader in 1966 and 1969. Those were tumultuous years, especially for African Americans, Big C. The number 40 jersey, yep, it was retired by the Chicago Bears. I think about it. Also, he played at Kansas, I think they called him the Kansas Comet. He wore number 48. That was also retired by the Kansas Jayhawks, Big C. 5 times first-team All-Pro running back from 1965 until 1969. So every year he was doing his thing, and it's amazing how his career is ended by an injury that oftentimes players can step away from an injury, and they can come back a year or two later, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the injury that ended his career, we saw half a dozen of them last Sunday in the NFL.
Yeah.
But this is the advancements of medical technology. You got to realize he's one of only 4 players in NFL history to be an All-Pro in his first 5 years in the league. And basically that's all he played was 5 years because he never recovered from that knee injury.
Yeah.
But he also has another piece of NFL history. He's the youngest player in the history of the NFL to be inducted in the Pro Football's Hall of Fame.
That's amazing, and I think about that, and I take no lightness in saying this. He was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1977, and ironically, when I think about guys like Jim Plunkett that came out of Stanford, and Gale Sayers went to Kansas. And then Plunkett was drafted by the Boston Patriots, forming, now the New England Patriots. Played for a couple of teams, won 2 Super Bowls with the Oakland Raiders. And also Tom Flores was the coach of those championship teams. Man, saying Oakland Raiders is funny now they're in Las Vegas. But if you think about Gale Sayers got into the Hall of Fame in 1977, and I believe he had no Super Bowl championships at that time, Big C. No championships at that time. And so when you see a great player like Gale Sayers passing on, I mean, I don't want to wait until Tom Flores is gone or the great Jim Plunkett. Do you think the NFL should realize, you know what, we've been doing a lot of people of color wrong, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, the Super Bowl didn't exist in Gale Sayers' era. Ironically, the year that he got injured was the inaugural year of the Super Bowl in the NFL. So many players that have graced the walls of the Hall of Fame that have their butts in that never got an opportunity to participate in a Super Bowl.
Yeah. I just wish his family, the very best. It's nice to think about people while they're here. And I know that he had the chance to witness his induction. It wasn't a posthumous acceptance into the Hall of Fame. I think about the movie Brian Sung with Brian Piccolo that I saw. I think it was in 1971 is when it came out. I must have seen that movie many times. Billy D. Williams, the great Billy D. Williams, played when James Caan. They played with in acting in the movie with Gale Sayers, Big C. And I just think, as a young boy, I really did not understand how great it was for those black men to succeed with so many things against them and outside of the arena, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, that's always been a problem for black men in America, Charlton, to be able to see, not just in the sporting arena, but outside the sporting arena, which is more important in life because sports is a very short-lived career. It's how do you survive outside the game? Yeah,
how you survive outside the game. So I still wish his family very well, our condolences. Really hope that things are, I know it's a tough spot, but I really just wish them the very best going forward, Big C. I want to also touch on a few things that are NFL related. I know I love the sport, and I know we have a game tonight. I don't know if they're the best two teams, but NFL football is NFL football. Thursday night game, the Miami Dolphins and the Jacksonville Jaguars. So it's an all-Florida event. And I know when you think about Swaggy Fitzpatrick, wouldn't it be something if Tua was added on to the starting lineup, or at least start the second half? Because the Dolphins, if they keep Swaggy P, they're probably going to go to 0-3. And you need something to energize your team. Don't wait until you're 0-6 or 2-6. I think it'd be a good time to. What's the guy out of Oregon? Herbert came in for the Chargers and led them to a close loss to the Chiefs. If that makes sense. Why not give Tua the same opportunity down in Florida, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, every quarterback scenario is different in the NFL. You have a team that's right now set up to play behind Ryan Fitzpatrick, just like with the Chargers. They were set up to play behind Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah.
This is a tale of two different quarterbacks. One has a mustache, one has a full beard.
Yep.
And Gunnar Minshew, who's been hot, in the start of the season here in the NFL, and Ryan Fitzpatrick, you don't know whether you're going to get Jekyll or Hyde. You don't know if you're going to get 3 touchdown passes or 3 interceptions.
Yeah.
And that's the way that the Miami Dolphins have gone. They've been a mistake-prone team here early in the season. The Jacksonville Jaguars have been very efficient. They played much better than what people have thought that they would because they got rid of a lot of household names and big superstars over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But Gunnar Minshew seems to be the real deal in the NFL.
Yeah.
And there's no guarantee that Tua can outplay Fitzpatrick. He didn't beat him out in training camp. There's no guarantee that he would play better than he does in a game.
That would be interesting. I would at least like him to get the chance to prove it on the field if you can't beat him out in game. But everybody has to make their choice. Sometimes coaches want to save the quarterback.
Look at other quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes sit on the bench for a year in Kansas City. Lamar Jackson sit on the bench for a half a year in Baltimore. And they the last 2 MVPs of the NFL because they had an opportunity to sit and learn the game. You thrust the quarterback in right away, and the results that you could end up with is Baker Mayfield, who's never had a winning record. Sam Darnold in New York, who's never had a winning record. Daniel Jones in New York, who's never had a winning record. There is plenty of proof that sitting a quarterback, allowing him to learn, is the best for the young man because the game in the NFL can destroy you mentally as well as physically.
Yeah, you don't want to have him getting there too soon. But my goodness, you only learn how to drive by getting behind the driver's seat. But we'll see what happens with Flores if they go to 0-3 on the season. I think there'll be a lot of tromping in the stands to say, hey, at least give the guy a chance. I want to go over to New York, or actually New Jersey. The New York Giants and the New York Jets play in New Jersey, the Meadowlands. The 49ers had some complaints about the MetLife Stadium but they did an investigation. It's hard to believe the NFL, when they investigate anything, they're not going to pull up a turf because one team has several guys that tore up a knee. But the turf at MetLife, they said, is good to go for Sunday's game between the New York Giants and the 49ers. But you're not going to have Saquon Barkley, which is the cream of the crop for the Giants, and then Bosa on defense for the 49ers. And then Garoppolo, I don't think Mullen's going to be much of a drop-off, my own opinion. I think they'll realize they overspent on Jimmy G. But give me your thoughts on players in turf is not an issue. Guys get hurt at every stadium, Big C. Your thoughts?
So why didn't the Giants launch a complaint against the Chicago Bears stadium, Charlton, where Saquon Barkley tore up his knee? I mean, teams look for excuses. That was the dumbest excuse by an NFL organization that I ever saw. Players get hurt all the time. Look at the number of players who got hurt around the NFL in this past weekend. And so were all those teams crying and telling the NFL they should investigate that stadium? Look how many games have been played at MetLife Stadium, and no team has ever complained about that. Put on the proper footwear. That's what you got to do. You come from playing on grass all the time, and now all of a sudden you don't know how to play on turf.
Yeah.
Think about the West Coast. Other than Seattle, that's the only team out there that has turf. And so this is a team that wasn't used to playing on that type of surface that didn't have on the proper footwear.
Yeah. It's amazing how I still think a lot of it, so many players have been injured all over the league, and I really think it's because a lot of them did not have the chance for the preseason, and that's something they have to deal with. Also, I want to look at going back to the East Coast. It's kind of the scene of the crime. In Foxborough, the old stadium, NFL football, the Las Vegas Raiders, no longer the Oakland Raiders, and John Gruden, they're going to return to New England, at least John will, for the first time as a Raider since the Tuck rule, even though he lost when he took Tampa up, that they got beat 28-0. I believe that was a game they had on the road up at Foxborough. But give me your feeling. This is where the Tuck rule happened, but Tom Brady, he knew he fumbled, and he was walking off the field with his head down. And them good old boys in Boston, they did a bean count, Big C, and they decided, wait a minute, if we call it a fumble, our season's over. So you know how Boston politics goes, Big C, and they decided that it was not a fumble. Now you have Gruden going back there, and instead of looking at a Tom Brady, he's looking at a Cam Newton, and he's giving him so much praise. And I think Cam Newton deserves all the praise. Wait until they loosen him up, Big C. Your thoughts?
And there's no players left that played in that game that's playing in that city, Charlton, that will be playing in this game. So, I mean, this is a whole new era. I don't think that reminds anybody of anything. I mean, think about the Steelers and the Raiders with the immaculate reception.
Yeah.
I mean, people can cry about anything that's happened to any organization over the years. This is about what's happening on the field. The Raiders are 2-0. The Patriots are 1-1. This is a duel between Cam Newton and Derek Carr.
Yeah.
Which one of these quarterbacks is going to be most efficient in the game? Which one of them is going to have the solid running game? That's what's going to come down to. Who can control the ball on the ground?
Yeah. Give me your thoughts on, if you think about the patriarch of the NFL, no pun intended, Patriots patriarch, it's Bill Belichick. I know John Gruden is a media favorite. The media mainstream really wants him to do well, even though he has a losing record as a coach, especially when you take away Tony Dungy's players. But if he can pull it off, he can pull it off. Your feeling, I know we'll do Big C's NFL picks tomorrow, but your feeling on what you've seen so far with the Raiders, what you've seen so far with the New England Patriots, give me your thoughts on what choice or what chances they have to go pull off a win up in Foxborough, Big C. Your thoughts?
I think that the Raiders are a much improved team. They've infused a lot of talent off their Khalil Mack trade. They've gotten rid of players that were disgruntled and non-productive in the organization, and they're playing football the way that Gruden has wanted them to play football. They're an up-and-coming team in the AFC. They're really the second-best team in the AFC West right now. When you look at New England has a team that's trying to develop some receivers, and I think these young receivers have responded to Cam Newton and what he has brought to the organization.
Yeah.
When you look at what Brady did to these young receivers, is that he was stuck in his old ways. He wasn't willing to adapt or work with these young receivers to get them up to speed. Cam Newton is a different mentor towards these young receivers who are understanding what they went through because he's gone through it.
Yeah.
So this is the reason why the receiving corps is much better now under Cam Newton than what they were under Tom Brady. You think about even Julian Edelman. He had a career night versus Seattle. Never had that with Tom Brady.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how you have a quarterback that can run and pass and get you out on the corner. That makes all the difference in the world. But we'll see what happens. It's about who gets first downs. and keeps the drive alive as opposed to punting the football away to your opponent. I want to ask you some thoughts, Big C. I know we talked earlier about, this is the same thing with the AFC East. Tonight's battle in North Florida versus South Florida, Gardner Minshew, passing efficiency versus Ryan Fitzpatrick, a little bit erratic. I want to get those two quarterbacks in your mind and then ask you about Derek Carr coming out from the West Coast and then Cam Newton. On the paper, you look at Cam Newton and Derek Carr as the better quarterbacks on paper. Gardner Minshew, obviously young man, and then Fitzpatrick. I know Jameis Winston's thinking, how in the world does he still have a job and I'm third string? Give me your feeling on who are the better quarterback tandems if you look at the teams that are playing in South Florida tonight versus what we have in New England over the weekend. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I'm not going to put any of those quarterbacks ahead of Gardner Minshew. When you look at his passer rating in the NFL, it's right up there in the top 5 in the NFL, what he's doing.
Yeah.
I mean, Derek Carr has played very efficiently with the Raiders. I mean, Derek Waller has made him a better quarterback, the big tight end that they have. Cam Newton is evolving in this New England offense. It's something new for him.
Yeah.
Ryan Fitzpatrick is just a journeyman, what he's always been in the NFL.
Yeah. I but still want to see Gardner Minshew do his thing a little bit longer. I saw him do the same thing at Washington State in the Pac-12. I know that's a little bit different level of sports, but it's nice to see if you can do it overall.
Look at what Lamar Jackson did in his second year. Look at what Patrick Mahomes did in his second year.
Yeah.
No one is saying that they need to see them do it any longer. I mean, when you arrive as an NFL quarterback and you can play, you can play. Jared Goff in his second year took off. So it's about being in the right system.
Yeah, they said the same thing about Carson Wentz, who might be playing the worst football in the NFL at this time. But we'll see what happens. I wish the man nothing but the best. You know how we do our military crisis hotline, and it's really for everybody. I mean, you have to be a foolish person not to get a checkup or get some help, mental health, whatever it is. Dallas Cowboys, I really appreciate Dak Prescott when he shared what he was going through with his loss of his brother and also his depression. Everybody goes through something at some time, but the smart people get help, and the guys who are not so smart don't get help. But Dak Prescott and the Atlanta Falcons, Hayden Hurst, would you believe they're to team up for suicide prevention, just like what Big C Sports does. We've been doing it for over a year now, whether it's military or civilians, and so they open up about attempting suicide and dealing with anxiety and depression. People think, well, you're rich. What do you have to be depressed about? Sometimes it's just a chemical imbalance or whatever it is. It's how you look at life. But Prescott's brother, JC, passed away of suicide in April, and the quarterback discussed his feelings, and he did not have to do this, on being depressed during the early parts of the COVID-19. Give me your feeling on how they can really help along with what we do, giving out the suicide hotline. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this is something that's been troubling Hayden Hurst for the past couple of years. Even when he was back in South Carolina, Charlton, he was a star baseball player, had planned on making his career in the NFL and being his family's cash cow. His arm went bad, and his mind went bad along with it, Charlton. He got on alcohol, got on drugs, talked about, taking his life. And so he knew what Dak Prescott was going through when Dak was talking about mental depression after losing his brother over the summer and everything. So he reached out to Dak and told him that he's not alone. He's not the first person to go through that. That he's had that similar situation in his life where he thought he wanted to end it.
Yeah.
There's many Americans that are in that place. And, I mean, people can look at high-profile athletes and say, okay, they're going to be the vanguard to get everybody to change their ways.
Yeah.
It has to be a concerted effort from a country, from your family, not just listening to a speech that's giving on television, even with our National Suicide Prevention Hotline number that we give out. This is a societal problem, not an individual problem.
Yeah, and it's just amazing when guys will get out and they will ask for help. And I really appreciate, because I even call for my own checkup. You can get some crisis hotline. I've been through my own depression with loss of loved ones and going through different things in life. And I picked up the phone and I talked to my doctor about it. He told me what to do. And I did it. And it made me feel much better. And just to look at things and realize we're not the only ones in life that have gone through things. I want to bring something up to you, though, because I believe that especially in this times, I was talking to a friend of mine who actually runs a TV station, a real estate show that shows in most parts of the country. He's a Caucasian guy. He's up in his 60s, and he's depressed. I'm not going to give out his name, but he said it's okay to talk about it. He's depressed. He has good money, has good success, but he's depressed. I gave him the hotline to call, and he said he'd call it. I haven't seen if he called it yet, But this is about everybody. It's not just an athlete. It's not just someone in the military. It's so important that we keep sharing that message. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it is. And like I mentioned, you just can't say because an athlete has this problem that now, it solves the issue for everybody, Charlton. This is something that's been going on for decades and decades in America. But many people have said it's a sign of weakness if you disclose it.
Yeah, those people are weak when they say that. I want to ask you something. And again, it's just your opinion. I like having people who have a different opinion than me. I know Kirk Herbstreit, Caucasian brethren, really appreciate his work with the media, came out of Ohio State. And he mentioned, I think, college football. We all have different things that are going on. But Kirk Herbstreit, I think about 3 weeks ago, right around the first part of September, he made an alleged emotional statement during college football game day. And now that the city of Louisville has come back with no charges against the police who killed Breonna Taylor, and I wonder if he's going to be silent because he hasn't made it out, and not that he has to. There's a lot of people, they would never say anything. But do you think it would be nice for him to come out and say something? Almost every athlete, men and women, have said something about the non-charges in Louisville, Kentucky. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I think a couple of weeks ago, Charlton, when he made that statement on television, you came out and praised him that following week about, him speaking up against social injustice against black people and how we need to listen and understand. This is really his opportunity to come out Saturday. He has that same platform all over again with millions of people paying attention to talk about the police injustice in Louisville, the Attorney General, miscarriage of justice in Louisville.
Yeah.
He has that opportunity, but will he take that opportunity? I doubt that, because last night, Charlton, during the NBA pregame broadcast, halftime show on ESPN cut off Jalen Rose when he said the police officers need to be arrested. They went right to commercial. They killed the mics and just went right into commercial, did not even let him finish his statement. So I doubt that Kirk Herbstreit will have anything to say about it. He had his moment in the sun back on September 5th. He's not going to repeat that again.
Well, this is where I disagree with you, because it's almost like if we look in the mirror and we say that everything that comes out of our mouth is perfect and that we're the only one that's sincere and that everybody else is lying or that everybody else is disingenuous, I think that's also erroneous to do that. Because Kirk Herbstreit can say the same thing about Big C. He can say Big C doesn't say certain things about every situation that goes on in life, so maybe you're disingenuous. I don't think it's fair to take the few people that will walk.
But you have to look at Big C. Big C is consistent about the statements he makes. If I make it one time, I'll make it 2 times, I'll make it 3 times. You can go back, as you say, check the shows that we have done. I have been consistent in what I have said against who I've said it against. I'm not backing down from anybody. And so I challenge him. I'm not saying he's disingenuous, but he's disingenuous if he does not do it.
Well,
that proves it was a one-off event for him.
And see, like you say, Google it. You got to look at what you just said. You look at the world based on your own point of view. You got to admit there's more than one point of view to look at every issue. But I would say to any man or woman that takes a stand to say we got to end this police brutality, Black lives do matter, and I want to congratulate that person and not say, oh, he's a phony. He's just like Donald Trump or Mitt Romney or Mitch McConnell. He's not like those people. So whether he says it 1 time or 10 times, I take that man at his word, because he could have said nothing like a lot of guys do, and that's my opinion.
Do you realize that in the Supreme Court, in the Dred Scott case in the Supreme Court, they said Black lives didn't matter. That's still on the books in the Supreme Court of the United States. In the United States, it's stated on the ledgers, and that's still used in a lot of situations going into the Supreme Court when there are trials. That Black lives doesn't matter. That's on the books in the Supreme Court in the Dred Scott case.
Well, it's not for everything in the world, Big C. I mean, there's more than one way to look at things.
I'm talking about the United States law. I'm not talking about laws around the world. I'm talking about the United States. The reason why things still happen, just like in this situation in Louisville, Kentucky, the Supreme Court laid a precedent that could happen, Charlton. And that's what they base it off of. Just like Trump is constantly talking about, he wants Supreme Court lawyers. He wants people to operate off the Constitution. What the Constitution states. And that's what the Supreme Court is standing behind when they said that black lives didn't matter in the Supreme Court.
Well, I don't know how you throw Kirk Herbstreit into that, being disingenuous with his statement, but everyone has a right to their own opinion. We're going to take what's called the Big C pause, and when we come back, we're going to talk more about some things that are affecting people, because it really is real talk, and we want to have real conversation. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we are back from the Big C Timeout, also known as the Big C Pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many apps that you can follow us on, and I really appreciate it. So going back to each individual, there are people that can say that you and I are disingenuous. And they can say, well, they're disingenuous because they didn't say it 50 times. They only said it 47 times or one time. I'd rather give people credit for something. But I didn't know what you were saying about Jalen Rose. What do you mean ESPN pulled him off the air or went to a commercial when he was giving some thoughts, Big C?
Last night at the halftime show of the ESPN broadcast, Jalen Rose said, I wish that they would arrest the police officer or charge them in the Breonna Taylor killing. Before he could finish that statement up, Charlton, ESPN killed his mic and went to commercial without even a roll as they normally do. They just went right into commercial, killed the broadcast. All right? This is what ESPN did last night. This is the same company that Kirk Herbstreit works for. You think he's going to make that statement on television? No, not after what they did to Jalen Rose. There's a memo. I can guarantee you a memo went out today in ESPN warning broadcasters not to touch on the subject.
Well, maybe Bob Costas will stand up and speak.
He doesn't work for ESPN.
But that's not the point. ESPN, ABC, NBC, CBS, they're all a small brethren. People make comments on everything. It doesn't matter what network they work for. They're either honest or they're not. So maybe Bob Costas will come up and defend Jalen Rose and say that he has a right to say what he says. But it was Bob Costas, America's maven of a broadcaster, that said we don't want to hear any more Black Lives Matter next year because people just want to see sports. And just like the divestment and apartheid in South Africa, name those executives that say they don't want to talk about Black Lives Matter anymore because when they get the microphone, they're always saying they're supported. I would hope that Bob Costas would do what Kirk Herbstreit said and at least come out and say what you feel, whether you think he's disingenuous or not. I got to ask you this thought. I like the word.
Roger Goodell said what your guy Bob Costas said. Roger Goodell said that earlier in the week, is that we look to move beyond this. This is what Roger Goodell made a statement on ABC News, ABC Morning Show earlier in the week. He sentimented the same statements that Bob Costas did. This is the commissioner of the NFL, said that we should have listened years ago, but he said we're tired of listening now, basically in his undertone.
Yeah, well, people have the right to say their opinion, and people have a right to fight back. What I heard, and I'm not sure of it, but NBA analysts, ESPN, they're owned by ABC. Mark Jones, I believe he's out of Canada, and he vows to dismiss security detail at upcoming games. And I believe I heard that he said he'd rather not have the officers shoot him, and police never saved him, never helped him, never protected him, never taken a bullet from him. They pulled guns on him. And Jones never kept them safe in a protest, never stopped the racists from taking the Black Lives Matter flag off my house, and he could do without it. And then the hashtag Breonna Taylor and I mean just so many issues that people have. But I think Mark Jones is an excellent broadcaster. I believe that he does football and basketball, does a great job, but I believe he got to start in Canada, and his thoughts about what he really feels about enforcement. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I take him on the same mantra I took Jamal Murray when he gave his emotional speech, after a game in winning, and he had Breonna Taylor and the young man out of Minneapolis on his shoes, Charles.
George Floyd, yeah.
And how emotionally it hit him. And Mark Jones is from that same country. And so even our brethren up in Canada understand the miscarriage of justice that goes on here in the United States. And for Mark Jones to make that statement, I know that ESPN will have something to say about him. And so they will squash what their broadcasters can say on air. that statement he made wasn't on air, but they're going to limit what these people can say on air.
Well, we will see. I think in another tweet he vowed to go without a security detail when he calls this weekend's college football matchup between Army and the University of Cincinnati. That's if they'll allow him on. It's amazing how these athletes are still just shutting up and dribbling. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it's going to occur because it's making the universities money. Athletes think that this is their ticket to the next level of playing football. But, not many of them will get that opportunity based on the numbers that are playing.
Yeah, if people got to know that. I just want to make sure that people understand what's going on in sports, and we got to speak our parts about it. I want to also touch on a few more things. College football, would you believe, in the Pac-12, Colorado football, in order to hold practice in an attempt to stem the spread of COVID-19, Colorado athletics has been forced to halt practice, put it on pause, at least 2 weeks after the county in Boulder, I think it's Boulder County, issued a prohibition on gathering among university students between 18 and 22 years old. Now, we know the Colorado Rockies play in Denver. The Denver Broncos play there. The Denver Nuggets, they're playing against the Lakers tonight, but that's in Florida. Then Colorado, last I checked, was part of the Pac-12, Big C. They're on pause. Your thoughts?
Well, no, the Pac-12 is not on pause anymore. They had an agreement to open up football. They're going to start playing in late October. But Colorado right now is on pause. Teams have been practicing in the Pac-12. The Pac-12 reached an agreement today to open up their football season at the end of October.
Yeah, I know they've reached an agreement to open it up, but will it happen? I don't know. There's a lot of pressure for it to happen. And if it's like other sports that can convince young black kids, you guys don't need money. Just go out and play. We're going to give you a hat and some shoes. Who cares if Black Lives Matter or not? Just make us some money. We're white institutions. Got to make the money. And speaking of that, not even being flippant, college sports, with football back, Iowa's eliminated programs. They want some answers. Instead of being transparent about why the University of Iowa, they cut some of the sports programs, the administration deflect and criticize, to the Big Ten. But with football returning and the Hawkeyes' bluff has been called, are they going to bring some of those other programs back that Title IX was forcing to keep playing, Big C? Your thoughts?
Charlton, this is all over the country in all Power 5 conferences where they dump several sports in all these conferences at different schools. And now how can they justify these sports not being played, saying that they're unsafe and they're allowing football to play? That's what a lot of the parents and the athletes are asking. You're allowing the football players to play. Why aren't you going to fund our kids' sports?
Yeah. So what do you think is going to be the solution? I think some sports will I think out here in California over the last 20 years, I think there's about 10 programs that have even stopped playing football, from Humboldt State, Chico State, Sonoma State. There was University of San Francisco, Cal State Hayward. There was UOP in Stockton, Cal State Fullerton, Cal State Long Beach, and I know I'm missing a couple more, but they never came back, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, those programs will never come back because of funding. But what these other institutions are talking about is that football is being played. And these other programs have said they were being cut for the same reason that football was not being played, because all fall sports would be canceled.
Yeah.
Now that football is being brought back, how do you justify not bringing back these other sports? That's what they're going to say. And they're going to end up in the courts in a discrimination lawsuit.
Yeah, and the court is a good place to be because you get the chance to have the time to face your opponent, your opposition, and somebody's going to be happy, somebody's going to be sad. But court is a great place to work things out. I even want to look at, since we're talking about some college football, the NCAA, Mississippi State versus LSU. They're supposed to clash this weekend, and you have two former Pac-12 coaches that are Lane Kiffin, it's LSU, Orgeron, and then the good old boy that was coaching at Washington State. They're going to be putting their talents together on the field, at least their athletes. And give me your thoughts about these two guys. They were formerly in the Pac-12. Now they're playing in the SEC. I guess they're going to give them more money. But give me your feeling on where they stand, because they're not talking about COVID anymore. Down there in the South, where most of these states have been hit hardest with COVID-19, but they're not talking about sports. Not talking about COVID. It's only about sports, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, sports is a religion, especially football is a religion down in the SEC, Charlton, and that's all they care about. they've admitted that their players have had COVID-19, but they're not going to report the results. It's all about getting the game played on the field, and that's what they're looking at now. You got Mike Leach, former Washington State and Texas Tech head coach, and you have Andrew Orgeron, former Mississippi and USC head coach, facing off each other in this opener.
Yeah, and I don't know who's going to win that. I don't know if Pac-12 style, throw the ball 50 times a game, is going to work in the SEC, where a lot of teams like to pound the ball, but we'll see what happens.
LSU won a national championship last year, throwing the ball 50 times a game.
Yeah, but oftentimes in the SEC, you can't do that and succeed. You got to have a good running game. And Edwards-Helaire proved that too. They got to have a good running game. Also, when you think about the conferences and the administrators, we had Notre Dame so far, and they've been put on pause. Their game with Wake Forest. We've had, I think, Houston and also Texas Southern, I believe, or South Texas, and they're put on pause. And now it seems as if Colorado, they've been put on pause for practice. If they were playing football, imagine they're put on pause and they haven't even had a game. I know Notre Dame played Duke and they played South Florida, and now they're on pause with the Wake Forest game. And it just seems like more and more they're just going to ignore this. But at some point in time, we talk about the court system, and people want to say Black Lives Matter. Well, will that go over to the world of athletics when players, and some will get sick? That's why they're putting things on pause. But you know the SEC and many other conferences, they'll hide it. Like the SEC said, I think Greg Sankey, the commissioner, they don't want to even tell people anymore. They just say, shut up and play. Will lawsuits ever hit the NCAA, Big C? Your thoughts?
No, it won't, Charleston. You got to look at what happened in Colorado. That was an executive order by the governor of Colorado. It wasn't a commissioner, wasn't a mayor. It was the governor of the state. And you got to look at how many colleges that he oversees, not just Colorado, Colorado State, Air Force Academy, Northern Colorado. There's many universities in the state of Colorado that he's in charge of. And he's in charge of young people 18 to 24, and he says there's no mass gatherings.
Yeah.
So it's not just Colorado, it's every university in the state.
Well, give me your feeling on this Sankey. He runs the SEC. SEC prepares to open play Saturday in a 10-game conference-only season, unlike any other in history. His focus on December 19th, and that's when they want to have the college football, I guess their conference championship game for the SEC, and that's going to be played down, I believe, in Atlanta. A lot of the teams end up either in Atlanta or Georgia. I believe it's going to be in Atlanta this year. How do you, as a person in media, also a parent, and I know you pump really hard for SEC programs, if you could talk to these people, Colorado's on pause. Notre Dame went on pause from pushing the game back. Several other schools have had pause. From Houston, I think TCU, there's a lot of them. What would you say to Sankey as opposed to just saying we're going to play no matter what, Big C? Your thoughts?
Why just put it on the conference, commissioner? Why not go to the governors of the individual states? The governors of the individual states are allowing this to continue. When you think about every governor in the SEC, they are the ones who are allowing football to be played. When governors, just like the governor of Colorado said, no mass gathering between 18 and 24-year-olds.
Yeah.
That means football cannot be played. You have to have a legislative move from the governor to make this not happen.
Yeah.
And until the governors grow some cojones, these things are not, they're going to continue to play.
Sometimes you got to know what cojones are, Big C. Not everybody speaks in different dialects, but I understand people like to eat cojones, they can eat cojones, whatever turns them on. But speaking of growing some cojones, I was watching a news program, and Trump says that after he loses the election November 3rd, he knows he's going to lose. That's why they're trying to do everything to pull out post boxes, and they've been shot down on state courts about trying to challenge the vote. But he says when he loses, they've even pulled out $6 million in Ohio. No Republicans ever won the White House without winning Ohio. But he's pulled out of it advertising in Ohio. But when he loses, he said he's not going to leave the office. What would his base say if President Obama had said such madness when he turned over the power to POTUS? And even though Trump is way behind in the Electoral College, the swing states, and also the national polls, Big C, what would the country say if Obama had the same thoughts?
Well, Charleston, the Senate solved that today because they passed an emergency resolution that there would be a peaceful transfer of power. And if Trump refuses to leave, he's impeached on that day, the 20th.
Yeah.
That's automatically what will happen. So he has no choice but to leave. he's removed by the federal government.
Okay, hold on. That's breaking news to me. Now, I know you're on the East Coast, and you tend to get news before I get the news. Are you saying these old white men that you always push back on, they told this bigot, this fascist, this sexist, whose daddy was arrested by the Ku Klux Klan in 1927, they said that when you lose, they're going to kick his butt out of office? Big C, your thoughts?
They had no choice in that move, Charlton, because they're separate powers. This is the reason why you have a separation of powers in the United States. On some things, they cannot have a dereliction of duty on. And that is one of the things they cannot have a dereliction of duty on, because this is written into the laws of the United States, a peaceful transition of power. They've had it ever since Abraham Lincoln was president. And so this is on the books. And so they're following that guideline. Just like they're following the guidelines on putting in a Supreme Court justice, they have to follow the guidelines on this. Many of them are doing it to save their butts on Election Day.
Yeah, they know, because there's already, I believe she's in, I want to say is in a lady in a northeastern state, and the Republicans have carried. She won it by like 37% last time. She's losing. I mean, I'm telling you, when Miss McCain, even before Miss McCain, I think when a lot of white parents saw white children that have been given every benefit that America has to offer since Reconstruction, since slavery actually, when they saw this white man in the White House, Donald Trump, calling the military to rough up white kids in Washington, D.C. at the nation's capital, and then he went over to some church and held the Bible upside down the same way Adolf Hitler did back in the day of Nazi Germany. And I said, when they saw their own white children being sprayed with rubber bullets and ominous weapons and seen them roughed up, I said that day he lost the vote, because even people that want to be pro-Republican, unlike guys like Mitch McConnell and Mitt Romney, they won't stand for that. And I'm telling you, I said that then, and it's happening now. And now you said that they said they're gonna kick his butt out of the White House. Big C, these white guys that you don't believe in. Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, they didn't do that for the black vote. Trust me, that's not the reason why they did it.
No, they did it for the law.
Because Black Lives Matter. They didn't do it to change the law. They did not change the law in this resolution, Charlton. All they did was follow the bylaws of peaceful transfer of power.
Yeah.
That's all they did. They just made it a resolution. It's always been an honorary thing amongst presidents and former presidents. They just passed a resolution. They did not pass a law, though.
Yeah. So they even know that Donald Trump, no matter what he tries to do with the Supreme Court, that his butt is already, the writing's on the wall. I hope he goes to prison. Just like he locked up those Mexican kids, and he has his family appointed to positions of power, which is a violation of the Emoluments Clause. His daughter Ivanka, and all those other knuckleheads that he's put from his family in power. I hope they all go to jail. I know they have active crimes against them, but I want to ask you your thoughts, because you say this is part of the law. And what we're fighting about now is also a part of the law, equal justice under the law. The 1964 Civil Rights Act, the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution, like, what does it really stand for if it's not being represented equally in the courts, but the courts just told Donald Trump they're going to kick his butt out of office when he loses? Big C, your thoughts?
You know when the Equal Rights Act was passed in America, Charlton?
There was 3 separate cases, but the last time was 1964. There was also an act that was done, I believe, in the late 1800s, but it was vetoed by Jackson when Lincoln was assassinated. But it's about how they apply it in the court. Big C, your thoughts?
1866, it was a law passed, equal rights under the law of American
and it was vetoed. It was vetoed.
Blacks were given American citizenship, and it was taken away.
Yeah, it was vetoed.
And so as we look at the Equal Rights, is the Equal Rights Act of 1964 any stronger than the Equal Rights Act of 1864? Because both of them call for equal protection under the law. What we just witnessed in Louisville under the Breonna Taylor case is not equal protection under the law. Equal protection under the law has never been equated to black people in America. Even in the Dred Scott case in the Supreme Court, when the Supreme Court said that Negroes were not American citizens. Think about it. The Supreme Court made that distinction, saying that Negroes were not American citizens. So in looking at laws put together in various years, you have to look at how all those laws intertwine. And when you look at the disparaging of treatment by white police officers towards Negroes in America, they don't look at Negroes as being American citizens. Why don't you have it this way in America? Why don't black police officers police black neighborhoods and white police officers police white neighborhoods. Hispanic police officers police Hispanic neighborhoods. Maybe you would get equal treatment under the law. Just like the court system says, a trial by your peers. When you don't have any blacks on a jury, when a black person is being prosecuted, how the hell are you having trial by your peers? It's not. There's not equal treatment under the law, regardless of any of these rules that have been passed. You know, the Equal Rights Act, they don't exist, because you tell me today, in 2020, do you honestly believe that blacks have equal rights and equal protection under the law?
No, and it's been designed that way since Reconstruction.
The system works the way it was designed to work. You think any of this thing is a miscarriage of justice is going on down here? That is by faith? No. The system is working the way the system was designed for it to work.
Yeah.
So as we keep talking about justice under the law, going to court, the system is working the way it was designed to work. And the Constitution and the Supreme Court has allowed for the system to work the way that it does.
Yeah.
So as we cry about the injustices going on in America from a black perspective,
Yeah.
this is what white America has set up to work, and it's working perfectly.
Yeah, and if for people who doubt that, there's an article called "The Color of Justice," and it shows how African Americans are incarcerated in state prisons. I know people want to watch the game. I know they say shut up and dribble. Just shut up and play in front of COVID-19 so I can get some money. But African Americans, they're incarcerated in state prisons across this country at more than 5 times the rate of white Americans, at least 10 times the rate in 5 states in the United States. And it reports that incarceration for whites and African Americans and Hispanics is not the same. And for the most part, when a black person is sent to prison, and even when they're accused of a crime, it's accused by a white person. But that's how the laws were designed that way. We talked about pig laws, back in the day, about a month or so ago, Big C. It's all been designed that way. But the only way to overcome it is just like Dr. King said. We got to go to the court. Dr. King marched, yes, he did. But he also got to the President of the United States, and Lyndon Baines Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. And when Donald Trump is kicked out of office, it's going to be up to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to do some things to make law fair, Big C. I want to close on something before we get to basketball.
Let me explain something to you about the Voting Rights Act and how the Voting Rights Act was passed. The Voting Rights Act was passed because Lyndon Johnson wanted to be reelected. And he was promised X number of black votes for signing the Voting Rights Act. He didn't do that out of his heart, Charlton. He did that to get reelected. And the people who he was signing the Voting Rights Act with guaranteed him X number of votes from the civil rights movement. That is the reason why he did it. He didn't do it to give equality in America. He did it to save his butt a job. That's the reason why he did it. So when people do things that are genuine and disingenuous, even though they have the same results, you need to understand why these things happen. The same action happened in Atlanta. When Atlanta, years ago, I believe it was 1948, when they got their first black police officers, and they got 8 of them.
Yeah.
The reason why they were able to get those 8 black police officers, there was a man named Joseph P. Lowry, who was the grandfather of Maynard Jackson in Atlanta. He promised Hartsfield, who was the mayor of Atlanta, that he would guarantee him 10,000 votes if he hired these 8 police officers. Those 8 police officers were still discriminated against. They had to get dressed at the YMCA. They could not wear a uniform when they were not in jail. They could not arrest white people. They could not patrol in white neighborhoods. They could not even drive a police car. But they negotiated a deal to keep him in office as a mayor. The same reason, and that was the same deal that was struck with Lyndon Baines Johnson to get the Voting Rights Act. It wasn't that he was caring about black people. He wanted to secure himself as president of the United States.
And what politician doesn't? Let me explain something to you. Would you rather he not sign it because he wasn't doing it for the egalitarianism, Big C? Your thoughts?
But what advancement did black people get from the Voting Rights Act, Charlton? They're still being manipulated. Still today, everybody's out there stumping for the black vote. You got to vote for me. But who is making a promise to the black people when they vote for him? Tell me which president, and all of them since Lyndon Baines Johnson, has gone out there and said, we're going to do this for black people. And something in their campaign said, This is what we're setting aside for black people. If they did what Maynard Jackson did in Atlanta, saying that black people are going to get 25% of all federal contracts, they're going to get 25% of everything that's done federally. They don't do that. They make no promises to black people saying that black people are going to get anything other than the ability to play sports.
So you're not going to vote?
I voted already. But what I'm explaining
so
to
you
tell me if I'm wrong. Which candidate has gone out there and laid out in your lifetime of things of what they're going to do for black people?
Is what?
So this is our mandate for black society. No, I'm asking you a direct question. You can branch off to something else and avoid the question, but tell me in your lifetime, what do you know from any candidate to say, I'm going to go out there and give 13%, because blacks are 13% of the population, 13% of everything federal that they're going to be involved in?
I told you I'm going to vote. You know why? Because you asked me a question. No,
I voted.
No, but you
I
don't.
hope that you vote.
But you don't.
I'm asking you which candidate in your lifetime has made the public promise of how they're going to assist and help black people, since they say that black people are a crucial part of them getting elected.
But you got two ears and one mouth, and every time you ask a question, you start talking. I told you, Lyndon Baines Johnson gave me the right to vote. And if you don't understand that, then you wouldn't have been able to vote either. You got to do something for yourself, and it's not about somebody promising something. But if you don't see the benefit of having the Voting Rights Act, tell every black lawyer and every Dr. King and Thurgood Marshall that they wasted their time because you don't get everything you want. That's what the court's for. You don't always get what you want, but you have a chance to. And so I love the fact that Lyndon Baines Johnson, even though you said he did it so he could get elected, I'm glad he signed it. Thank God we don't have him acting like Donald Trump. I want to close out.
I'll ask you to answer the question.
I already told you, but you don't listen.
Which politician in your lifetime
I just told you.
has gone out there and made the promise for advancement of black people in America based on their campaign?
Did I just answer your question?
No, you did not.
Okay, that means
you said Lyndon Johnson gave the Voting Rights Act.
Okay, so
but I'm asking you,
that's in my lifetime.
President beyond the Voting Rights Act, because he didn't do anything to make life better for black
Big
people.
C, I have.
I'm asking. He can't get the right to vote. Blacks were voting before the Voting Rights Act came into place. They were voting. They just made it a national law. Okay.
Oh, he made it a national law?
You a very specific
I asked you, but you already got your own answer.
In your lifetime has gone out there and said we're going to set aside a certain percentage of governmental assisted contracts that minorities can have it.
And as I already told you, Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act. It's up to me to decide what I want to do in life, and politicians do what they want to do. But you don't. It's like no one pleases you anyway. You're gonna find a way to criticize us anyway. I answered your question. No, I answered your question, but you didn't hear it.
Which president in your lifetime?
I already told you.
Maybe you'll understand.
And I told you 4 times.
Which president in your lifetime, since the Voting Rights Act has been passed, has set aside certain percentage of governmental projects that minorities can have, and made it part of his presidential campaign and policy?
So you answered the question. You answered the question.
Minorities had an equal participation.
You answered the question as a free man. As a free man, you answered the question. What president has done anything for you, Big C? Your thoughts?
What president has done anything for me? None that I can remember.
Okay, and you made it. And what do you know? You made it anyway. Isn't that something? You made it anyway.
This is for your culture. What I did was something that was free, Charles. Education is free in America.
Oh, really?
It was free before I was born. It's been free since I was born. Thurgood Marshall made it a point. This was a Supreme Court justice. Before he became a Supreme Court justice, he sued the United States. Had nothing to do
Oh,
with
really? Hold on a second. Hold on a second.
Black lawyer
hold on a second.
Sued the United States.
You said
you need to be able to go to an integrated school.
You said a black man
preferred not to go to an integrated school growing up. And matter of fact, up until 71 or somewhere around there, where they integrated the school.
Okay,
it wasn't an automatic thing.
So
it was a slow burning process.
Thurgood Marshall
also tore down the black community when it happened.
Thurgood Marshall was smart enough to go to the court system, but you're probably not happy with that either, because he had to fight people that had different voices. But that's your opinion, and everybody has their own opinion. In the final 2 minutes, you're going to see 2 teams on the NBA court tonight. You know the Lakers are not going to want the Nuggets to win, and the Nuggets are not going to want the Lakers to win. But give me your feeling on, if you think about it tonight, in the bubble, the Lakers they're up 2-1. They could be down 2-1. But we know the players both want to win. But which coach and his players had the most impact in the Final Four teams in the NBA bubble in the last 2 minutes? Your thoughts?
The coach that's had the most impact on the bubble in the NBA, the Final Four teams?
Yeah.
That'd be John Calipari of Kentucky. John Calipari has more impact in these Final Four teams in the bubble than any other coach. When you think about the Miami Heat with Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo,
yeah,
they're out of Kentucky. You think about Anthony Davis from the Lakers. You think about Noah Cantor from the Celtics. You think about Jamal Murray and one other player with the Nuggets. He has an impact. He has 7 players. But you think about the players that have been impactful in the success of the bubble.
Yeah.
Anthony Davis hit that three-point shot at the buzzer from Kentucky. You think about what Jamal Murray has done in dominating the 3 series that he's been playing in out of Kentucky. Bam Adebayo from Miami. He eliminated, the Celtics in Game 2 with that block to go up and save that game on Jason Tatum. And we saw what Tyler Hero did last night. Tyler Hero last night scored the second most points ever in NBA history in a playoff by a rookie.
Yeah.
The only guy he trails is Wilt Chamberlain. But he scored 39 points in 37 minutes off the bench, which was a record within itself. No other player in NBA history has ever done that.
Yeah, it should be tremendous basketball. And whether it's, no matter who wins, whether Boston comes back and overtakes Miami or the Lakers or Denver, I think we're still looking at a Lakers coming out of the West. It's going to be hard for Boston to get on top of Miami. It should be good basketball no matter what. It's all fair in love and war. Bob Kraft gets all of his prostitution sting charges dropped in Florida 1 day after the Breonna Taylor charges were dropped, I guess, if you want to call that drop. I guess they're paying a crime, they get punished for shooting a wall and not murdering a person. And then Lori Loughlin out of California, when you talk about how the court system treats people, she get to choose what prison she goes to, and she's going to get all type of luxuries inside of that prison for her college campaign fund of $500 million, getting her kids into USC. It's all fair in love and war. We don't have to agree on everything, but I do agree. Back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always ask Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, we got a couple of major league games being played tonight. We got the NFL with the battle of North and South Florida. We got the NBA game with the Lakers and the Nuggets. And both of these games are very meaningful. If Jacksonville wins this game, they go up 2-1, and nobody can take their tanking. Then you might see that call for Tua.
Yep.
But I expect the Nuggets to even up the series tonight because they have outplayed the Lakers in 2 of the 3 games.
And
I also want to talk about our first-line healthcare workers.
Yep.
Our nurses, our doctors, our first responders, they're always on the first team, giving it all 100% day in and day out.
And they will always do their best, and you can too, no matter what you're going through. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports Show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.